Hello and welcome to part one of this training on providing accessibility and reasonable accommodations. In this training, we will broadly discuss the definition of accessibility, become familiar with the definition of accommodations, and the different types of accessibility along with examples. Part two will cover how to process reasonable accommodation requests and build universal design into your programs and activities. This training is developed by Dr. Kenitra Keeney, WSU Extension County Relations Coordinator. WSU is an equal opportunity provider and employer. When representing the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, or Washington State University, WSU, remember to use the non-discrimination statement. USDA's non-discrimination statement lets the people we serve know we don't discriminate based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, age, marital status, family parental status, income derived from a public assistance program, political beliefs, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activity. The USDA non-discrimination statement and the "And Justice for All" poster provide information on how to file a complaint. The WSU non-discrimination statement has additional protected classes which states we don't discriminate on the basis of ethnic origin, use of a trained service animal, creed, genetic information, sexual orientation, gender identity, protected veteran status, honorably discharged veteran, member of the military, or immigration or citizenship status. Additionally, WSU's statement provides information on how to file a complaint with WSU's Compliance and Civil Rights Office, the Department of Education, or both. Persons with disabilities who require alternative means of communication for program information or need to make a request for language access should contact their local or state agency. When possible, the full-length statement should be used to communicate with our community partners and the people we serve that we don't discriminate. When this isn't possible, we must at a minimum put WSU is an equal service provider. Additionally, we need to alert people they have the right to reasonable accommodations and language access free of charge. In this training, you will learn: what is accessibility? What are accommodations? Different types of accessibility. Review some examples. What is accessibility? In the context of disability accessibility, we define this as something being designed or modified to allow a person with disabilities to use or access spaces and services without a barrier. Accessibility is about providing inclusion, to include providing an equally effective opportunity to participate in or benefit from a public entity's aids, benefits, and services. In this training, some laws will be referenced. Please be aware some of the language used to write these laws is insensitive. Providing accommodations is required by law for those who receive federal funding. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is a federal law prohibiting discrimination against people with disabilities by federal agencies, federal contractors, or programs receiving federal funds. We are going to focus on Section 504, which states no otherwise qualified handicapped individual shall solely by reason of his or her handicap be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. This means people must have equal access, be able to request reasonable accommodations, and service providers must not participate in discriminatory practices in hiring, admissions, and service provisions. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life. This training focuses on Title II, which focuses on state and local government and their instrumentalities like generating people with disabilities. And now it states event as reasonable of state in the access and equal opportunity to benefit from all of their programs, services, and activities. Title II applies to all public universities. Title II requirements are based on Section 504. The ADA extends Section 504's requirements to all public services regardless of whether they receive federal financial assistance. What are accommodations? Recipients of federal financial assistance must provide auxiliary aids to individuals with disabilities, at no additional cost, where necessary to ensure effective communication with individuals with hearing, vision, or speech impairments. Auxiliary aids include such services or devices as qualified interpreters, assistive listening headsets, television captioning and decoders, telecommunications devices for the deaf, video text displays, readers, taped texts, braille materials, and large print materials. Next, the reasonable accommodation statement should be on all of WSU Extension's public notifications, event, and/or activity announcements, which should contain the point of contact's name, title, contact information, and last day a request can be made. Here is an example. In accordance with federal laws, if you need a reasonable accommodation, please contact insert name, the insert title, at insert email and telephone number no later than insert date. 2 weeks before the event is usually the cutoff date for more complex requests. Part of ensuring civil rights are not being violated is documenting the interactive process and making sure every attempt has been made to fulfill a reasonable accommodation. While the goal is to fulfill reasonable accommodations, we must remember accommodations do not need to be granted if such modifications of policies, practices, and procedures would fundamentally alter the nature of the program, service, or activity, or result in undue financial and administrative burdens to the entity. Once a request has been made, every attempt should be made to document the request. This can be done via a form or email chain. The minimum amount of information needed is the date of the initial request, the name of the staff or faculty who handled the requests, the chain of correspondence, the date the accommodation was approved or not approved, and the nature of the accommodation or justification for non-approval. Documentation is key to demonstrating the interactive process was followed and every attempt was made to provide equally effective opportunity. There are generally 4 categories of accessibility. Visual impairment focuses on people having difficulty seeing or are blind. Visual disabilities can cause difficulty seeing objects, judging distances, or accessing information in visual media. Causes include genetic disorders, degenerative diseases, or physical damage to the eye or brain. To ensure visual accessibility, use alternative text for images, high contrast between text and background, audio descriptions of videos, large and clear fonts, and avoiding color-only meaning are important practices. Physical accessibility can be improved by providing braille signs, tactile maps, and audio descriptions. Hearing impairment focuses on auditory disabilities, which can be partial or the complete inability to perceive sounds and access audio-based information presented in media. Common characteristics include hearing loss or total deafness. Auditory impairments can be caused by inner ear nerve malformation or damage, neurological disorders, or physical trauma to the brain. Providing closed caption and transcripts for audio-video content, visual cues, hearing aid compatibility, and hearing loops, along with interpreters, can assist with hearing accessibility. Mobility impairments focuses on individuals who have difficulty with physical movements, such as walking or using their arms. Mobility disabilities can cause muscle slowness, tremors, loss of fine motor control, or paralysis, resulting from conditions like cerebral palsy, Parkinson's disease, or stroke. Barriers such as stairs, narrow doorways, or uneven surfaces should be avoided when possible. Making sure that physical spaces have ramps, elevators, and websites links are easily clickable and/or provide voice control options for devices. Cognitive impairments focuses on individuals who have difficulty with mental processes such as memory, attention, communication, learning, or problem solving. These can result from developmental conditions, brain injuries, dementia, or neurological disorders. When asking for written consent, be sure to use clear and simple language. Other techniques include providing structured environments, visual aids, memory tools, specialized education, therapies, quiet and calm environments. Let's explore visual impairment and accessibility. In the first example, an individual with a visual impairment can attend a class, but the printed materials are too small. In this case, while the individual is allowed to attend, they are not receiving even means of access because they are unable to read the printed materials. In this example, we would ensure the printed materials were in large print, provide digital format compatible with a screen reader, or provide access to text-and-talk software. Other tools include letting an individual use a tablet or front row seating to be closer to the presented material. In the second example, there is a plant demonstration, and an individual needs an accommodation for visibility accessibility. In this instance, the program coordinator or instructor could assign an assistant to provide descriptive instruction and assist the individual. You can include a best practice when introducing yourself. You can provide an auditory visual. For example, "Hello, my name is insert name. I am a insert sex or gender. I am state culture or ethnicity, and am approximately feet and inches tall. Today I am wearing," provide description of attire. This is optional, but it is meant to help those who are attending with vision impairments have an immersive experience. Let's explore hearing impairments and accessibility. In the first example, you have an individual who has partial hearing loss and requests an accommodation. The accommodation is for all people to use a microphone when presenting or asking questions. During the question and answer portion, people from the audience continuously stand up and start talking without the microphone, stating, "I can speak loud enough, I don't need a microphone." In this example, it is important to have multiple microphones and remind individuals using a microphone is a best practice for building in accessibility. When multiple microphones are not available, have the presenter repeat the question. In the second example, an individual attending a cooking demonstration is unable to hear the instructions and request an accommodation. In this case, it might be more difficult to have closed caption or visual aid. Through the interactive process, you both might conclude a sign language interpreter is best. Other methods of accessibility include providing live captions during meetings, using communication access real-time, providing visual aids such as slides, handout or written summaries. There are also assistive listening devices that amplify sound directly to hearing aids. Next, let's talk about mobility impairment and accessibility. The first example, you are planning an event and looking for collaborative opportunities or donated spaces. One of your community partners donates a space to you. Upon looking at the venue, you notice there isn't a ramp, elevator, adequate parking, or accessible bathrooms for individuals who use wheelchairs as their primary means of mobility. This example is challenging because the donated space might reduce financial barriers to attendance while creating a different accessibility challenge. You don't know if there will be an accommodation request, and if there is, you might only have 2 weeks to prepare. Accommodations are sometimes denied because of the financial burden, but in this case, accessibility should be considered proactively instead of reactively. A second example, you host a series of events which take place outside and often include trail tours. You receive an accommodation request because an individual can't make it up the trails. Financially, you can't afford to make the trails accessible. There are a couple of options. First, we engage in conversation with the individual and discuss possible options. We don't want to segregate this individual. What we could do is create alternative sessions that covers the same academic material in a more accessible area open to all. The final example includes letting an individual into a class which requires extensive note-taking, but the individual is unable to keep up and requests an accommodation. In this instance, you could assign a peer note-taker, provide a speak-to-text software option, or provide a recording of the information. Other considerations for mobility assess include providing flexible scheduling and extra time to travel or complete tasks. Finally, we will explore cognitive impairments and accessibility. In the first example, you are invited to speak at a local event and aren't the host. You know there should be a reasonable accommodation statement on the public notification, which notifies the attendees of their right to reasonable accommodation. But because you aren't the host, you aren't sure if the public have been informed. You know you won't be presenting slides and will be covering talking points only. Not all cognitive impairments will have a formal request, but there are some simple steps which can help your audience, such as recording your speech so others can listen to it at their pace, provide visual slides upon requests with visual aids, and speak in plain language when possible. If a cognitive impairment accommodation had been requested, depending on the request, in addition to the above measures, you could reserve event seating in the front row, provide the speech in advance, or a description of the material and talking points in advance. In the second example, you are hosting a youth activity. The guardian requests an accommodation based on a learning disability. Through the interactive process, you agree that providing visual aids such as timers or checklists, along with repeating key points, using video, props, and group discussion, will provide the youth with effective equal opportunity. Other considerations include allowing for more time to complete assignments, reducing the number of concurrent assignments, and offering a quiet work area or the use of noise-reducing headphones. In Part 1, we learned WSU Extension receives federal funds, which means it is illegal for us to discriminate on the basis of discrimination. And there are federal laws which protect individuals with disabilities. We are required to notify individuals of their right to non-discrimination, to request a reasonable accommodation and language access. WSU Extension accomplishes this by putting an accommodation and language access statement on all our public-facing advertisements and in some cases, academic materials. USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture requires us to keep some basic documentation to show we are in good faith engaging in the interactive process and we are dedicated to finding accessibility solutions. Finally, there are 4 main categories of accessibility, which are visual, hearing, mobility, and cognitive. Accessibility conditions can occur at birth or arrive at different stages in life, and individuals may have multiple accessibility challenges. There were examples provided on how to best make our programs and services more accessible. In Part 2, we will cover how to fulfill a request and explore how to build universal design into our programming, allowing us to become proactive in our program design instead of reactive. This 2-part series is designed to provide a high-level overview on reducing barriers for our service population. Thank you for your time and attention. Please watch Part 2 of this training.